I heard that Ali Abdaal is quitting medicine. Color me surprised. I'm shooketh. So my buddy Prerak Juthani, who also has a great YouTube channel, go show him some love. He sent this video to me, said that since I did something very similar a few years back, that I should totally do a reaction video, so here we are. Now, similar to Ali, I also left clinical medicine and was focusing purely on entrepreneurship. We have different businesses, but one of mine also does focus on YouTube, which is called Med School Insiders. And I've been doing that full time since 2018. He's in the UK, I'm in the US. The medical training systems are similar, a little bit different. I think that I quit essentially 1 year after, or 1 year deeper into the training than he did. Remember he made a video about like wanting to do residency in the US at one point. So I was in residency, I was a year in when I quit. And I feel like myself and probably a lot of you saw this coming years back. So I'm happy for the guy. I think this is exciting times and looking forward to seeing what he has to say. Let's dive in.
I think I'm finally at the point where I can comfortably admit to myself and to you guys that I'm gonna be leaving medicine for good.
Okay, so right off the bat, this is a really difficult decision to make. A lot of people work very hard to get into medical school. They're working hard throughout medical school. They kill to get into residency, and then to walk away, it's that sunk cost fallacy. There's like, wait,
I worked so hard for this, like, do I really want to walk away?
It's a huge decision to do this.
We'll talk a bit about how things like money, fame, fulfillment, status, and impact, and helping people, all of that kind of ties into this decision. So over the last few months, as I've been thinking, do I want to continue to be a doctor? Money is not a factor for continuing to be a doctor because in the UK, doctors don't get paid very much.
So a really important point here, in the UK, doctors definitely make less than in the US. However, the whole money equation is similar in both. As a physician, you are a salaried employee for the most part. So whether you're in the UK or in the US, you have a pretty tight-ish range as to how much money you're gonna make. And in the US, don't get me wrong, it's really good money. But what he's pointing to is that as an entrepreneur, by running his own business, this YouTube and the other things that he's doing, there's essentially no cap on the income. You can make more and more and more as you leverage your time more effectively. So really important too, money should not be your only motivator because think about it, if you're spending a lot of time day in and day out on something that you're not actually excited about and you're doing it just for money, you're spending like a third of your life being miserable, doing something you hate. Like, I would not be a toilet salesman even if it paid me $5 million a year because I would just be miserable spending 40 hours a week trying to sell toilets all the time. Actually, that's not true because now that I think about it, those Toto super toilets are so badass. I have one in my bathroom. But you get the point, like you gotta do something beyond just money, which he's getting to.
But then people always say, well, okay, being a doctor isn't just about the money. It is also about the other stuff associated with being a doctor. And the reason we go to work is not just for money, it's also for fun, satisfaction, helping people. For some of us, the work itself may not be inherently fun, like going through a spreadsheet is not inherently fun, but the banter that we have with our coworkers and the good vibes and the fact that all our friends are at work, that's what makes it fun. For some of us, it's the fact that work is an intellectual challenge. This is a nice thing within medicine. It is quite an intellectual, and there is some element of lifelong learning. You get to improve your skills, you get to be better, you get to have a sense of progression. All of these things add up in various ways to give this kind of concept of fun that I enjoy my job, I enjoy my work.
So I'm not sure what specialty he was in, or I think in the UK, he was like essentially, the equivalent would be like a senior medical student, like before you decide which specialty you go into, is my understanding. So I feel like Ali's the kind of guy that can find fun in a lot of different things, right? Which is really cool. I think if you find a specialty that really just meshes with you and you love it, and for me that was plastic surgery, really fit my interests and my personality and things like that, it does really have a super strong draw.
And so for a while I was genuinely thinking, okay, this YouTube thing is really cool. I love the entrepreneurship stuff, I love the teaching stuff, but I also really quite enjoy medicine. And so what if I just do the medicine thing part-time? And I did try it. I tried a few shifts, I tried working in medicine part-time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that every day I was in the hospital, I was thinking, okay, hour by hour, this is just nowhere near as much fun as I'd be having if I were hanging out in the studio, hanging out with the team.
One thing I'm gonna say about that is like, I feel like people in surgery love being in the OR, and I was definitely one of those people, like, time would fly. I'm like,
oh my God, what? 5 hours already? That felt like, 1 hour, if that.
If being a surgeon was just operating and you didn't have clinic and you didn't have to do discharge summaries, and you didn't have to do a lot of the bureaucratic stuff, then man, it'd be hard to walk away from that.
Helping people is, for some people, a big part of why they do the work that they do, allegedly. Same for me, same for basically every doctor I've spoken to. There is a personal joy that we get from helping the patient in front of us, but if we think about it, is it potentially the most impactful thing that we could be doing with our time? Let's say I am an investment banker and I make, I don't know, $10,000 an hour. And let's say I volunteer at the local soup kitchen. For that particular investment banker, they're not actually helping that many people by volunteering at the soup kitchen. And if they wanted to genuinely help people, they could just put in an extra few hours at work, make $20,000, and then donate that money to the soup kitchen to allow the soup kitchen to hire a bunch more people to help a bunch more people? Am I doing medicine because I enjoy the personal satisfaction of helping someone who's in front of me? Or am I doing medicine because I think the thing that I do actually has impact? There is a personal joy that we get from helping the patient in front of us, but if we think about it, is it potentially the most impactful thing that we could be doing with our time? But if you care about moving the needle in terms of like eliminating these things that cause like huge problems, like lead poisoning contributing 1% to the global burden of disease, an individual working on those things has far more like real lives saved, even though it doesn't feel as warm and fuzzy to donate money to the Against Malaria Foundation as it does to sit there in front of an actual patient, or as it does to volunteer at a soup kitchen.
A few thoughts here. The whole conversation about helping people as it relates to deciding what to do with your life always feels like a little bit of internal conflict when people talk about it, or at least when I talk about it, because I feel like there's some level of phoniness, right? Some level of like, hey, I want to look good and I want to like be a good person and help people. What I like to boil it down to is, first of all, helping people is on a selfish level something that we all should strive to do because it makes us happier. So he's talking about that in terms of the satisfaction you derive from helping people. I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit pessimistic with my view on people. I feel like a lot of the things that we do are inherently selfish. I care about my family and my close friends a lot more than strangers and you can tie that to selfish reasons. But the other thing here is there's almost like a false dichotomy he's pointing to, which is that you can either help someone one-on-one and have this personal connection as a physician, or you can scale it and then it's a little bit more disconnected, like the lead poisoning as an example. So this is something that I talked about in my video on why I decided to quit plastic surgery residency, which was the idea that through entrepreneurship, you can scale that impact. And it was first through medical devices that I noticed that, like, wow, you can help hundreds, thousands of people through a single technology. But what I've come to realize after doing this for a few years is that you can still get that one-on-one connection, that deep satisfaction, feeling like you're helping a person through these online technologies. People whose faces I've never seen. Maybe I've talked to them on the phone, or they've just sent me DMs or emails and such. I'm not gonna say it's the same as saving someone's life when you're a doctor, but it's also not nearly as faceless as I think a lot of people expect it to be.
If I were not a doctor, the next someone else would take my place. In the UK, in most developed countries, in things like even like the National Health Service in the UK, there are enough doctors going around, and so the system overall does not lose a doctor. In the place that I was as a junior doctor, 2 years fresh out of med school, there was nothing special that I was offering to the medical profession. I would rather not have the feeling of satisfaction and cause more impact than I would have a feeling of satisfaction and not have that impact, if that makes sense. And there's a bunch of studies, a bunch of evidence that shows that when people retire or when people become unemployed, they're more likely to go into depression because now they have nothing to do.
Really interesting point he raises about how in retirement, there is a larger proportion of people who have depression or cognitive decline. And what I think that actually comes down to is that when we are younger, when we are kids, we have this really strong, just innate curiosity and willingness to learn and explore the world. And it gets beaten out of us through school, through a career decades long where we learn to just veg out in front of the TV or not explore the world with that same level of curiosity that we once did. And I have friends who are actually older than me that have maintained this curiosity, and they're in their mid to late 30s, and even though they are essentially retired, they're loving life because they're constantly growing, they're constantly learning, they're constantly challenging themselves and doing new things.
I came across this exercise called the Gravestone Technique, which is to imagine what would you want written on your gravestone.
That's pretty funny because I did the same thing. So I already made the decision to quit, and then I waited like 10 weeks or so before I actually pulled the trigger on that decision. And I was seeing a therapist once a week, every week for those 10 weeks, because my thought process was, hey, I worked so hard to get here, and now I'm considering leaving. Like, what are you thinking, Kevin? Like, you must be crazy, or you could be crazy. So I went to see a therapist to kind of hash things through. One of the exercises that he suggested was actually the eulogy exercise, which is very similar to this gravestone technique.
The three things that I would want written on my gravestone are some combination of good father, good husband, and good teacher. I care more about being a decent teacher than I do about saving lives as a doctor.
So my exercise was a little bit different. It was about like who would be saying things and what would they be saying about you, and it was like my future kids and my future wife and my siblings, etc. And the main thing that I came away with was that I was very much focused on accomplishment and achievement for much of my young adult life. And this kind of marked that time in my life when I was shifting from less achievement and more towards relationships, because I think that's going to be much more meaningful and fulfilling long term. And it looks like his were pointing to the same thing, the good father and the good husband.
But then the final thing around, I think, why we do the things that we do is the more unsexy reason, which is for social status. And being a doctor, there is a large amount of social status and prestige associated with being a doctor. And similarly, if you're a hotshot lawyer or investment banker or anything like that, there is some level of status that we get from our peers for having that particular job title. A big part of it has been like, ooh, I don't want to lose that badge of honor, that badge of prestige that being a doctor gives you.
So the social status thing is hard to imagine until you're in it, because when you hear someone else talking about it, you're like,
Yeah, whatever, like.
Social status, not a big deal.
but when you're in it, like, it creeps up on you and it's kind of sneaky. And it wasn't something that was a major force pulling me back into plastics, but it was one of those things that I had to acknowledge and be like, oh, whoa, I didn't realize that this actually did matter to me. And now, is that important? Should I let that dictate my decision? And I decided no. But in the moment, I was like, yeah, being a plastic surgeon is much more prestigious than being some entrepreneur.
So if we go over this list and think about it in terms of like the leaving medicine thing, it's not about the money, because I'm making more money on YouTube and doing this business stuff. It's not really about the fun, because I'm actually having more fun doing the YouTube thing than I was doing medicine. Helping people will come back to. It's not really about purpose and meaning, because my purpose and meaning I get from teaching rather than from saving lives as a doctor. And it shouldn't really be about the social status, because, you know, I want to continue to be a doctor so that I can call myself a doctor. Is, in my book, it's not the way I'd want to live.
He's separating out the helping people and purpose and meaning, but I think the two are actually really deeply connected. So the teaching is actually a function of how you are helping people, right? So going back to the selfish thing, even if you were the most selfish person on planet Earth, you should strive to help people through your career because it is going to make you happier long term. I figure you could also argue for like helping animals or helping other living things, but I think helping others is a fundamental part of finding purpose and meaning.
A big one was fear, the idea of like risk aversion.
Oh, risk aversion and fear. People that go into medicine tend to be very risk averse, at least with regards to their career, right? You go into medicine, straightforward path, you're gonna help people, you're gonna be prestigious, you're gonna make good money, like it just follow one step after the next, put one foot in front of the other, that kind of thing.
And then I was interviewed on a podcast called The School of Greatness, and ended up being sort of a therapy session where Lewis was sort of coaching me through this problem that I was having around, do I want to stay in medicine? Honestly, it was only really when Lewis pointed this out in those stark terms that I realized that, you know, the skills that I've developed through this YouTube and internet and business thing over the last like 5 to 10 years that I've been doing this, I can easily use those skills to make more money if I need to in the future. And so holding on to medicine, because I need the salary potentially at some point in the future if these other businesses don't work, was just like completely irrational and dumb on my part. And I realized that I just hadn't really tested that assumption. So that was the risk aversion side of it.
The important thing here is that what you'll notice is that Ali first built the YouTube following, built the business, built the revenue streams, built that internal sense of confidence before he was able to realize that. Because Lewis and him couldn't have had that same conversation before he started a YouTube channel. I often point out how the fake it till you make it is bad advice. What you need to do is do hard things, take on slightly larger and larger risks and challenges, and grow and improve and learn, and then see that you can do more than you initially thought. Similar for me, I'd already built Blue Link, my first company. I had built Med School Insiders to, I think we were like at 300K subs when I quit residency. And it was only after having some of that experience under my belt that I felt that, hey, you know what? I think I can handle this in the future. Even if this fails, I should be able to start something else because I have the skill set.
Number one was hate. What if people on the internet will hate on me for leaving medicine? I'm leaving medicine in the middle of a pandemic.
I can relate to that. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I had already quit residency like a year prior, right? There was some level of guilt. I was like, damn, like a lot of my co-residents were in residency and this thing is happening and what's going on? There was a little bit of guilt that crept up for sure. So then making that decision in the middle of it, because I'd already made the decision prior to the pandemic, would be way more challenging.
I guess another part of the fear was like, will my channel and business die if I don't continue to masquerade as a doctor or continue to peddle the fact, hey, I'm a doctor and YouTuber as well, and therefore you should listen to me.
You know, I never actually thought of that for myself because it wasn't as relevant to my business, but people brought that up because I had started Med School Insiders when I was a medical student and I had continued to do so when I was a resident surgeon. But a couple thoughts on that. Number one is that we tend to get so focused on our identities and like how we got to where we are that we tend to overlook the importance of where we're going in the future and how we're gonna change and grow and how we're gonna leave certain identities behind, right? So for both of our businesses, you can argue it was highly relevant because as he's saying, he's balancing the whole medical school with YouTube channel concurrently. And for me, I'm like, hey, I'm a resident surgeon and I'm gonna help you get into medical school and into a competitive residency. And the credentials that we have, or the fact that we have done this, is very important and relevant to building trust with the audience. But once you have built that trust, once you've built some momentum there, then you don't really necessarily need to keep those credentials. You've already proven a point.
Is the only reason I'm doing this because I want to continue to hold on to this badge of being a doctor so that my YouTube channel has this like extra little flex thing that sets me apart from most of these other productivity YouTubers. I wouldn't be concerned at all about not having an impact on people because I know that I'm not special as a doctor. Like anyone in my position will do the same thing.
You're not the best doctor in the world. They could probably do
that. Yeah.
They could probably do it better than you because they obsess over it.
Yeah, the people who obsess over it could probably do it better than me.
Oh, that is so key. When you go into entrepreneurship and you're creating your own path, you are doing something truly unique. You're following your own curiosity, your own interest, your own skill set, whatever you want to develop and bring to the world, that's on you. When you're a physician is a very noble, awesome, excellent profession. I mean, my business is focused on helping people become doctors, so no shade on the profession. And maybe you're like the leader who's like pioneering some treatments in the future, but at the end of the day, it is much less unique, I guess is the right word to use. And again, I don't mean that in a way of throwing shade at it. And that's important too, because 99% of doctors are usually following the best practices. They're not the ones who are pioneering and generating the new treatment modalities. The few that are doing that are the ones who are obsessive, who find this to be such a strong calling, and they don't want to do other things outside of that professionally, right? They are so, or maybe their side gigs, their entrepreneurship is like a biomedical device that is related to their primary specialty.
My colleague can be equally nice to them, right? So the fact that I am the one there being nice to the patient and holding their hand and stuff, that alone probably shouldn't be a reason for me to continue to do the thing. And really, if I were doing that, the reason I'd be doing it is because I want to feel good rather than because I want the patient to feel good. Because like I said, the patient would feel good anyway, because if you put me out of the system, another doctor would take my place and they would be the one holding the patient's hand.
That's really key. I think a lot of people don't like to accept that, but that's key. Like, I remember getting a lot of flack from people who were like,
how dare you take that medical school seat and that residency seat and now you quit and
they were so upset. But here's the thing, man, like someone else just takes your spot. And actually in the US at least, there are fewer residency positions there than there are medical school graduates. So then that makes the point even more relevant, because you have a lot of medical school grads who don't have a residency position. They need to do residency. So, hey guys, I left here, you can take this instead. So the number of doctors is unchanged. And the saving life thing, that relates to the specialty you choose. Like, some specialties are gonna be saving a lot more lives than others. The average emergency doctor or neurosurgeon is gonna be saving a lot more lives than the average dermatologist or plastic surgeon, as an example. I think he's using the saving lives just kind of like metaphorically, not literally, but whether a specialty saves more or fewer lives, I don't actually think that's going to make a meaningful difference on your sense of making a change in patient lives. Because when you help that patient as a psychiatrist through depression, or you help that patient who has some chronic digestive disease and they're now returning to a more normal state, you're saving their life in a non-literal way. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. I'm
not trying to compare here, but for example, a teacher has some impact, right? It's a different sort of impact than someone has saving someone's life.
I was saying that earlier.
But I've had literally thousands of messages from people saying, your stuff has inspired me, your stuff, you know, when you taught me how to study better for my exams, that helped me get through school a little bit better, it helped me be less stressed.
Those comments are, like, you don't even expect that when you start a YouTube channel, but those keep you going.
I've had messages from people saying that you saved me from the brink of suicide because I saw your videos and I was super inspired by the life that you live and I realized I want to do that myself. That is a different sort of impact to the impact you have saving lives as a doctor. But to me, that kind of impact feels more fulfilling, more purposeful, more meaningful. And so the way I'm trying to think of it is that, yes, I'm not helping people by holding their hand or by taking a decent history or by arranging a scan for them as a junior doctor would, but I'm hopefully helping people in that other sort of way. And I can't really compare it to saving lives because it's a different kind of scale, but hey, it's a different sort of helping people.
So for me, I saw a lot of pain amongst other medical trainees. One of my classmates in medical school committed suicide. There were 3 suicides at my residency program in the first 7 months. Like, there's a lot of pain amongst the medical students and residents. And for me, a big driver for starting Med School Insiders and the YouTube channel was to help people manage the whole process more effectively, because in the US, the system is definitely broken. I can't speak for the UK, I'm not that familiar. And that's the cool thing about this, is that as a human, as someone charting their own path, you can choose what it is that you find meaningful. And for Ali, he's explaining the kinds of things that were meaningful to him when he was helping people and teaching people, right? And for me, it was something slightly different, but kind of in a similar vein, helping medical trainees.
The concept behind effective altruism is that, you know, we're evidence-based in everything else that we do. Why don't we be evidence-based in the way that we spend our money as well to make more of an impact on the world?
There's actually a really great Tim Ferriss podcast episode about effective altruism with the founder of a really big effective altruism charity that I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting right now. And we'll link that down below.
Callum, who says, are you actually really seriously going to quit medicine, or are you going to change your mind in 3 months? This idea of changing your mind is really, really interesting. I'm kind of mates with Callum, so I know he's kind of asking this like not as like a dig against me, which is totally fine. I welcome digs because we can talk about them. I think changing your mind is actually a good thing. 2 years ago, I decided, two years ago, I decided I was going to move to America, take the USMLE and become a doctor in America.
I think this is actually really interesting that you can see the personality tendencies in something as simple as just a decision of what to do with your career, right? So I think I don't like uncertainty as much. I like to make a decision, be done with it, and like be very clear. So I made the decision pretty quickly, and then I ruminated on it. I saw my therapist for 10 weeks, but then boom, I made the decision and I was done. Like it's like clean slate. And I think Ali has been kind of going back and forth because he has some like, maybe it's internal tension or he's getting pulled this way and then that way. Because I feel like he's been yo-yoing with this for a couple of years. So it's just kind of interesting to note that. I feel like it seems to me like he's a little bit more comfortable with the not knowing, kind of the going back and forth. Whereas maybe for me, I want to have once I make a plan, a path, I'm like, all right, cool. Like we're committing to this, which is, I feel like I need to reflect on that and see where else that comes across in my life.
And then I tried it out. I tried some of the exams. I tried preparing for it. I realized this is a large amount of work.
Yeah, man, USMLE is it's one hell of an exam.
And then the YouTube channel and the business started going really well. And then the equation changed. So I made a plan that I'm gonna go to America and be a doctor. But then over time, as I got more information, I realized maybe this is not worth it anymore. I realized this is not fun. And I think there is value in quitting, and there is so little value in clinging to a decision that you made some time ago.
There is the risk-averse mindset, right? That is so common, but a lot of people actually point to the statistic that, I don't know, 80, 90 something percent, like the overwhelming majority of small businesses fail after 3 years or 5 years or whatever stat you wanna throw out there. Part of the reason that statistic is so depressing is because there's no barrier to entry to become an entrepreneur, to call yourself an entrepreneur as a small business owner. If you've already demonstrated some success, or a lot of success as Ali has, and you develop the skills, and you are certainly able to repeat that or do different things in the future and grow and experiment and pivot and whatever, you're gonna be fine. You gotta be okay with that level of uncertainty. You gotta trust in yourself. And again, that comes from doing the slightly harder things, not faking until you make it.
What if YouTube dies down, social media doesn't work out, isn't medicine good for the long run? And I think this again is what I was thinking. I was thinking that, oh, this social media thing has a shelf life. Like no one's a YouTuber forever. If I'm in my 50s, am I gonna be a YouTuber still? Then I kind of realized after the chat with Lewis Hose and a few other people, that I don't need to have a plan.
That's key. You don't have to have everything figured out. You will figure it out along the way.
Like, I'm pretty sure I won't be making YouTube videos at the age of 50. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, who knows? So I've got a solid safety net of money, so I can literally go 10 years without making any money at all until I figure something else out. And I also have a decent skill set. So if I need to, I can get a job at a startup, I can do marketing, I can do videography, I can do photography. There are all these other things that I could do. But genuinely, if I were to lose everything, I'm pretty sure I would find a way to build another business or startup or YouTube channel or whatever media thing and be able to make more money than I'm making as a doctor.
So one other thing about the whole conversation about, hey, am I gonna be YouTubing at 50 years of age? What if it fails? Will I start other things? What Ali's been doing and what I've been doing as well is diversifying the income streams, right? So there's different businesses. I have a couple of medical education. I have my personal channel. This channel is like getting into just random shit that I enjoy. And I feel like this approach where you're not necessarily spreading yourself too thin, but you're trying out different things. I feel like that's just a more fun, exciting way to live life. I think that if I were to do one thing for the rest of my life, it's less likely that I would be as fulfilled, as happy, as excited about it day in and day out for those several decades compared to going from one project to the other and like building something and then outsourcing it, delegating it, automating it, and then jumping to the next thing.
Test your assumptions, write them down, talk to them about it with people, because it's very easy to it yourself, which is what I was doing for so long.
Richard Feynman, you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool.
Until people like my brother, people like Lewis Hose, people like other friends pointed out to me that the way that I was thinking about this was kind of flawed. I think it's like Richard Feynman says that the first person you must not fool is yourself because you are the easiest person to fool.
Oh, there he goes.
I'm a med student myself, and the only reason your productivity tips were interesting for me was because you were balancing both med school and running a business alongside. If you quit medicine, you will become just like another guy on YouTube. I run the risk of losing that audience. And if now medical students stop following me because they're like, oh, I don't care, you're not a doctor anymore, that's totally fine. Saswat says, if it's true, then you've lost your appeal. Without it, you're just a guy who makes tons of money selling productivity courses. We don't see the real world evidence of your tips. I'm sure it makes more economical sense for you, but no longer a fan. Yep, totally get it. That is the risk. Again, if we lose people like Saswat, all the best.
Having all your eggs in one basket, especially with something as fickle as social media, is risky. I think that Ali is in a very robust situation where it's very unlikely that he's gonna be losing that social following, but it's still best practice to diversify. So the cool thing is that once you have a really large YouTube channel like what Ali has, then you can very easily create a diversity of revenue streams. And this is what a lot of YouTubers do, right? You see Peter McKinnon, and he has like physical products like his backpack, and I'm sure some, like, doesn't he have a coffee or something as well? Or maybe that's Graham Stephan. But same thing for me on a much smaller scale, which is that once I had a few 100,000 subscribers on Med School Insiders, then I created the website. Then we started offering the services. Then I started recruiting the insiders to actually provide those things. And then with the Med School Insiders channel, then I can diversify and start promoting my other business, MEM, because MEM is now an online software as a service study tool. So I agree, YouTube and anything like that, like the social media, Facebook, Instagram, you can't rely on that sustaining you forever, but it puts you in a very powerful position to then leverage that and then diversify and create other streams of income.
Without this YouTube channel, I would not be in a position to actually be able to kind of follow my dreams and do the thing that I want to do, which is teaching and writing, rather than the thing I kind of guess I felt like I had to do, which was being a doctor. So again, thank you. If you've been a viewer for any length of time, you have contributed to my ability to leave medicine and hopefully follow something that I am genuinely more passionate about than the thing that I made a decision to do when I was 16. So yeah, thank you so much for watching.
Man, I'm happy for Ali. I feel like it's been a long time coming, right? A couple final thoughts. Number one is, as YouTube, as social media gets more and more crowded, like this last comment from this guy saying that, hey, you're just another productivity guy, with you not being a doctor, you know, you lost a fan, unsubscribe. It's becoming more and more apparent how important that initial one-liner as to who you are is in terms of getting appeal. So I feel like the whole identity of being the part-time doctor, part-time YouTuber, even though my understanding is that he hasn't really been doing the doctoring part for some time now, is probably beneficial. People are intrigued by like the one line, like, oh, have you heard of this guy? He's a doctor and a YouTuber. So from a marketing perspective, whether that was intentional or not, I think that was actually really brilliant. And then the other thing is, I want to say like, congrats, welcome to this side. This is like such an exciting place to be, but I mean, Ollie's already been crushing it in this space for quite some time. For me, it was like going, 70-hour weeks in the hospital doing surgery to then doing 70-hour weeks in entrepreneurship, doing the YouTube, Med School Insiders, and MEM. So I guess there's less of this like hard transition, but regardless, I feel like at the end of the day, you don't ever want to look back and think, what if? And this is such a cool, unique, awesome opportunity that to not take advantage of, you'd always be wondering, what if? If you guys want to learn more about my decision about quitting the whole surgeon thing, then check out this video or watch that one. Much love, and I'll see you guys there.